Now that you have a lot of these data, and a lot of these big organizations do, you are the custodian. Well, guess what? With great power comes great responsibility. And that's where, a new class of companies, or basically companies which were always there, but are accelerating their market presence around data privacy, around data governance, around the management and observability. All of that comes to center stage. One of those companies which we invested a couple of months ago is called Big ID, which provide, you take disparate sources of data, you start adding. First thing is you need to understand what all data do you have. Second, you should be able to tag it and basically allow for whether it is regulation concerns, whether it is compliance concerns, whether it is data quality situations, all of those things on your data. So those are like the broader perspectives, which is happening from once the data is created from the sources, all the way to how it is managed, warehoused, and now it is ready. And when I say now it is ready, that's where the second part of the story starts, which is towards the AI side. You have the data which is prepared in all ways, shapes, or form which was possible. Now you're moving forward to, okay, I now need to create a model. I now need to train a model. I need to then deploy the model on the data which I already outlined to you, and then get the results. Do this iteratively. This entire cycle needs to happen quickly. This entire cycle needs to, there are no dollars given to creating the fanciest model. At the end of the day, if it doesn't help you move your business faster, it's all in oblivion. It's all in isolation, doesn't matter. But the second class of companies which we see here emerging a lot are around this ML ops, what we describe as ML ops. For the longest time, again, as I mentioned before, a lot of these companies, as organizations decided to do or tinker with AI, it's still very easy to go to SageMaker or go to a big platform like Dataiku or even DataRobot, which is our investment. And basically, you have all the tools there. For a citizen data scientist, you have, if you don't want to know what is going on under the wraps, but you are just concerned with your data and getting the answers first, you go to a platform such as that. What happened about 2 or 3 years ago was the entire DevOps methodology came into this AI ML stream as well. And people were like, okay, we are sophisticated enough. We want to use best of breed. We want to use the best modeling tool along with the best deployment tool, along with the data versioning tool. And obviously, a lot of these tools sprung into motion, had a lot of open source coming in, and whereas on one end there was Databricks with the whole Spark movement, but then there were companies like Pachyderm which started the data versioning movement. Pachyderm is also our investment. At the end of the day, you are back into much like a DevOps cycle. You now have the ML ops cycle, and there is innovation in all of these domains, and there are companies which are seeing huge amount of money, even in this new reality of capital being not as abundant in the past 3 or 4 weeks, going in that direction. And there are companies around model creation and model training. HPE acquired a company, Determined AI, last year around that piece. Then you go to the model deployment. How fast can you deploy a model, and what attributes does it need? There are obviously multiple solutions. The most common open source there is Seldon. We have partnership with that company, but they are getting a lot of traction there. And then once you've done all of that, is what data was the company, what data was the model trained on? And all of us, I think, heard about the Apple credit card example, right, where the husband and wife got different credit limits because of the AI black box algorithm. And that basically changed, at least here in the Valley, the paradigm of, hey, I can't use a model which is a black box. I need to understand how the model is arriving at the conclusions it is. And that led to a lot of interest in companies around observability, around explainability of models, so on and so forth. So whether it's companies like TrueEra or Fiddler or Arise, they all went there. And we see a lot, many more companies and dollars still continue to flow in that direction. And then keeping all of this together is, again, the whole data versioning piece. What version of data was this model trained on, so on and so forth. Our companies, so there is a lot of innovation. There's a lot of companies heading in that direction as well. Pachyderm, as I mentioned, is one. There are other companies in that domain. But at the end of the day, you can imagine, just like DevOps exploded with tools for every specific thing and doing that very well, you can almost imagine the similar ecosystem evolving here. Obviously, the jury is out on how big this ML ops and the tools capability here would be, but that's one area which is going on. And I know I've been talking for a long time. I want to pause here before I head to the other topic, if there are any questions or anything I can answer.
No, so Abhishek, I think there are a couple of questions that I have, but why don't I let you kind of complete your thought process and go through the other piece, then I'll come back with 3 or 4 questions. I think my questions would be around, so what we are seeing, and this is more of an investor to investor dialogue, but in many of these cases, I think 2 questions I have. One is in terms of you have trained the model, you have deployed the model, right? And now, you are going on inferencing, but you are seeing kind of things starting to diverge. So are you seeing more observable AI, those kind of solutions, technologies? Could you talk about that aspect, right? More about observing the behavior of how the models are performing, right? Benchmarking it, coming back and saying that, hey, this doesn't seem to be, the results seem to be diverging. It's time to upgrade the model. Where are they storing the data? So this is one question. And the second question I have is more related to privacy. In fact, we are looking at one privacy company right now, and it seems like you are right. In fact, the companies are in a dilemma. I've gathered all this data. My AI/ML team, the data analytics team, wants to use it, but hey, my legal team, my data protection officer is putting it under lock and key. And so this privacy enhancing techniques, the differential privacy aspect, the T-closeness, and all of these aspects, the privacy tech, right? Or privacy tech 3.0. How are you guys seeing that market kind of coming up, or is it still too early? So these 2 questions.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So let's start with the first one, around the observability and that. So that, what I described in the ML ops scenario, that is under the deployment pillar. Mm-hmm. And within deployment, there are a couple of things which people were concerned about, right? At the beginning, it was, okay, I have a model, just deploy it. I don't worry about what the model is, what is inside, what attributes does it work on. I just want the result. That's what was the case about until 2019 or 2018, you can describe. What started happening with all these regulations and all these challenges which people had, some of them Apple use case I just talked about blew out of proportion, was, okay, how much of the methodology which I used in DevOps, which is, hey, my application is containerized and now it is going to runtime. I need to observe my application, the whole APM piece. I need to optimize my application and then continue to look at. Same phenomena started coming into this ML ops deployment pieces. So now there were multiple things which you were looking at. One, I have this model. What can you tell me about this model? What is inside this black box? There are multiple parameters on the left and multiple parameters on the right. What can you tell me around those? The parts around explainability here, and as I mentioned, there is a lot of companies which are doing that. Second is plain observability. Fine, I know how I created the model. Can you please tell me, how the parameters are interacting with each other, what data is going in, how the things are working well or not. And third, the top point which you touched on, which is optimization. Is this the best model? Can I prune the model? Can I prune some of the weights on the left or on the right? Can I make this model get to the results faster and with a higher accuracy? And there are optimizations which are going on the underlying hardware. Again, everything was GPUs. Guess what? All this AI inference-oriented silicon has come into picture, Cerebrus, GraphCore, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So that is going on. Then on top of that, how do you optimize the entire hardware layer and the libraries layer? That is going on. So there are companies on that optimization layer, companies such as Run AI, companies such as Deci AI, so on and so forth. And then is the model itself. How can I optimize it automatically or automagically, whatever it is? And there are companies like Darwin, there are companies which are going on that. So there is a lot of innovation happening in each aspect of it. At the end of the day, what people have realized is this ML ops piece is going to become a big threat vector. I didn't talk about that because we didn't have enough time, but what happens if I can fool the model by putting bad data? You know, the bad data can be about people, can be about, you know, their driving behavior, their buying behavior, whatever else. Can nation states, can hackers go in and fiddle with the data, which then gets used by the model, and model automatically tunes itself to completely wrong parameters and gives you an answer which you thought was amazing, but turns out is a dud. You would not even know that. And there's a lot of companies which are now beginning to look at that ML ops layer on what data is being injected. How do you secure that data? Do I need to decipher all of it? Like you said, you know, chief privacy officer doesn't want to give you the keys to the kingdom. Well, in that domain, how do you use the data and provide the governance and security of it? So there are companies like Calypso AI and a bunch of others which are going in that direction. What you will see more and more in the next 2 to 3 years is this entire domain around security and governance of AI in this ML ops layer becoming or taking center stage.
Got it. And do you want to touch upon the privacy tech or privacy enhancing, the PET space?
Yeah, so you know, again, the privacy enhancing space, what I've described it, that the way I look at it is it starts right where the data is generated, way before you come to the whole ML ops domain. So, you know, the data is being generated, how you are storing the data, you know, in your warehouse or lakehouse or whatever have you. That's when you start applying all these envelopes, so that when you come to this ML layer, you already know what kind of data you're looking at. So the companies on the data privacy side have become, as you know, have become huge. You know, companies like Security AI, companies Big ID, which we invested in. There are a lot of other companies in that domain. It's not a trivial problem. It takes a lot of effort for people to provide the governance and security and privacy aspects to the data. The most, you know, the biggest effort of which is understanding what data is where. Yeah. And that's where most of the people are.
See, I would probably consider those pieces as kind of the basic hygiene factors as well. I think my question was more related to, well, you got to share this data now, right? Are these aspects, I know the big four, big five are working on many of these aspects. For example, differential privacy, right? Even areas of homomorphic encryption and so forth, right? Or pseudo-homomorphic encryption. Then if you're sharing the data, some kind of a secured compute, right? So do you start seeing these kind of technologies kind of coming in? Are you guys investing in these kind of spaces at all?
Yeah. So let's talk about homomorphic and let's talk about secure enclaves and secure compute. A couple of ways how things are coming in. Again, homomorphic has been around for a long time. The longest challenge or the biggest challenge for homomorphic has been the need of compute, the amount of compute you need to in order to look at some of the data while it is still encrypted, which is good for, if you are a small fetch operation or it's a small Lambda function. All those things are okay. As soon as you get into these, let's say a big computer vision model, homomorphic encryption is not yet there. It's going to be a few years, and we have been tailing, the market leaders here. Unveil is one, which we have looked at since their inception, so on and so forth. And Duality is the other. Those are the two market leaders in homomorphic encryption. The other piece is around starting, what workload is running on your compute all the way to the AI model. So start from silicon, start from the secure enclave, which Intel has. HPE also has efforts around that. Then what workload is working? Is it attested to the hardware which it was supposed to run? Then within the workload, what data is being used? What attribute can you attach to it? So as long as you can create this, let's just say an entire vertical or entire slice of the processor onwards all the way to the data which that model is using, that is where we see a lot of opportunities. And right now, these three pieces are disconnected.
Okay.
My anticipation is at some point of time, these things start talking to each other, and there are companies around that.
So Abhishek, would love to shift some gears. So let's talk about more from a compute angle. I know you guys have taken bets into the AI compute space and so forth, guys like GraphCore and so forth. Now, I see kind of three distinct areas of play. So obviously one is the data center aspect. The second piece is more about connected robotics, visions and so forth. So I call it kind of the edge. And there's probably another micro edge element, right? In terms of the sensors and so forth, even voice activated gadgets and so forth. So could you give a very high level landscape view? I know we are running out of time, but at a very high level, I mean, we have been hearing about these companies, the GraphCores, the Sambanovas of the world for a long, long time, right? Last 4-5 years. And they've all struggled with software in terms of replacing NVIDIA and so forth. And lately, only 2021 and now 2022, we are seeing them kind of raising a significant amount of money and kind of shaping up. Can you help us with some, what are the deployment scenarios that have happened in these cases? Are these companies kind of revenue positive? Are these guys, still kind of getting to market? Would you love to understand, at least on the data center side, which seems to be a bit more mature?
Yeah, so let's talk about that quickly on both data center and edge side, and for the far edge, like the sentient kind, really low power, we might skip because it's still a smaller market. To begin with, we have taken bets in the data center side, not in the direct AI like GraphCore, Sambanova. You mentioned that we have looked at all of those. We invested in a company called Light Matter, which uses silicon photonics to do a lot of that effort, again, shooting out of the target. And then on the edge side, we are investors in Mythic. Let's talk about the data center first. Again, the idea around having a special purpose silicon which can accelerate your workload, your models, is a good one. And that has been around. GraphCore started all of this. Nigel and the team started this, and then Sambanova came in, and Cerebras, and there's like 5 other companies. And now each of the hyperscalers have their own efforts around that. But silicon, as you guys know very well, is a different ball game. It takes ginormous amount of capital and a huge amount of time to get to a place where you have few customers which are ready to scale your product. And to be honest, while some of the architectures have been great, you can't forget the 800-pound gorilla companies like NVIDIA here, and which are accelerating as well and have all the capital to accelerate. So while GraphCore and Sambanova and others started with a huge advantage when they started, and they continued in that direction, NVIDIA was catching up and continues to catch up. So unless you are a fairly differentiated offering, whether it is Light Matter using photonics or Cerebras, which is a ginormous chip, and I have all sorts of compute on that. It's going to be very difficult to win against companies such as NVIDIA. Because
Abhishek, what about my take, more to the edge side of things?
Yeah, so on the edge side, the situation is fairly different, in my opinion. There are no clear market leaders. We invested in the, you can call it almost the market leader company called Mythic, but we looked at multiple different avenues of what is going on edge inference, right? There are companies around low power, really low power, using analog, mostly digital, so on and so forth, multiple approaches. For us, the answer through HPE Labs was, let's focus on companies which have analog oriented approach, because that way you have a lot more innovation going on, which is why we chose Mythic. So far, they seem to be ahead of the pack. Obviously, time will tell.
Got it. So sounds good. Abhishek, I think we would love to continue the conversation, but I know we have to be just conscious of time. It's 9:30 already. So we'd love to bring you back to our weekly, monthly meetups that we have, and would love to continue this discussion, maybe a bit more razor sharp focus towards specific areas. And I know we have met in our office in the past. Would love to continue and chat. When is the next time you are coming over to India?
Hopefully soon, if COVID behaves.